allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let the records show that all members are present with the exception of Mr. Churchill. Do we have any additions or deletions to our agenda?
I move the agenda be approved as presented.
Support.
Motion and support to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We have the minutes from our December 16th meeting. Motion and support to approve the minutes from our December 16th meeting as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, our first item on the agenda tonight is Air North Communications and Alice Arnett request for a special use permit for a wireless communication facility.
Okay, on the screen there is a drawing provided of the entire parcel on which the facility is proposed. It's a 39-acre parcel that lies at the intersection of Orchard Beach Road and M33, the southwest corner of that intersection. Again, a 39-acre parcel. It is zoned agriculture and forestry management. The facility profile drawing is provided here on the left of the parcel drawing. So the facility in this case is taking the form of a 60-foot high wood pole with antennas that extend another 10 feet above the pole for a total height of the antenna, the pole and antenna of 70 feet. There's also a detailed drawing provided, noted here on the total parcel drawing, showing the driveway, some of the structures on the site, including 2 dwellings, providing distances for location of the proposed pole and antenna, looking at a 300-foot distance from the road right-of-way, 90 feet from the driveway. There's also measurements there then indicating the 70 feet fall zone, if you will, for the facility. That is the extent of the proposal as a communication facility, which of course does require a special use permit in the zoning district.
Okay, do we have any questions?
Where's the information showing that they've investigated co-locations on other antennas in the area?
Yeah, we have a representative.
Do we?
I think I do.
I'm from Air North. My name is Charlie Dacos. I'm the submitted the application. We don't have any documentation as far as other facilities. We actually have locations on this piece of property. We've had facilities there for several years. Air North acquired MI Lakes, and they had services there for several years. We've already got several customers, 130 some odd customers coming off of that location already, and the property owners asked us if we could remove the equipment from the home and continue keeping it on the location or on the property, just have it on a pole itself. So by moving it to another tower, another location, could potentially affect access to a good number of the customers that we already have.
Are you saying that you couldn't get access to those same customers by co-locating on either the tower just to the south of you, about a mile and 3/4 south?
That's correct. Yeah, based on the how the tower is located to some of the other access points that we have out further in the country, because we have some that are to the north and some that are far to the west. And based on the location of the current, based on where we're currently located, it's a beautiful location that sits up on top of the hill that shoots directly across to one of the access points, but it also shoots beyond the hill that's there and continues out further to a couple of other access points that we have.
We normally have a map that shows
I think there was one in the
Yeah, and I believe I included one with the staff report as well. I think that's.
Yeah, that was the map that was included in the packet.
If I could
Are
find
the,
that.
yellow dots on the map you gave us telling us where the other towers are? Is that what was supposed to be?
Yes.
Where our
Yeah.
other towers are?
We have an existing tower here.
Yeah, and I'm not sure who owns
The
that. I don't know. if
proposed
it's a-
tower here.
Yeah, the proposed tower is the one that we're proposing. Is that the location?
Oh,
where
that's
we have
just the
facilities? And the other one,
pack here.
I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that's a cellular tower.
This one here? The existing tower.
I believe so. I'm not sure who owns it, or I just know the equipment array at the top.
I just
looks
lost
like
it
it's a
all.
cellular tower.
And you can't co-locate on the cellular tower?
Well, the location's not ideal for the current customers that we already have. We already have the existing locations, the other access points that are tied into this particular one, and that cellular tower. I don't know if we're able to lease space. I don't know what kind of
Well, that's what
space they have.
we normally require you to come up with, you the applicant.
Page
Well,
33.
It's on
To
page
show that-
33. It's kind of-
Okay, thank you. We can go pretty fast through a large document.
You have your picture of just before the findings.
Right.
Okay.
That's going to take you hours. Do you want me to hit the page up?
Yeah, I guess. You can do that.
Yeah, ready?
Go.
All that. Page 33 is that one. Hundreds of
Outside.
pages away.
We're getting warm.
Which page 33?
There's
There's more than one
33.
thing on there.
Oh, that's
Do you want me to try?
No, that's the exhibit for the next one.
right.
Yeah. No, I think you passed it.
Did I?
Yep.
Yep.
Yes. Our name's there.
It's not there.
Yes, it is. Right
There
there.
it is.
Right.
There it is. There's the subject location, cell tower there. I don't think there are any other existing cell towers for the scope of that map. And again, this comes from
Well,
our
you've got-
database of cell towers.
You've got one we just approved up there on just off the river.
Carter Road.
Carter.
Right. That hasn't been constructed yet, so these would be existing towers.
Well, we've got one there that's up and one that's approved within 4 miles of each other. And this one's going right in the middle of the two. Now my question is whether the customers you have couldn't be serviced by one or the other of those two towers. Look at this.
I can do the research to find out if we would be able to communicate with the other access points that we have further out in the country from either one of those locations.
See, I don't think we can approve it unless we either know that the towers that are there won't allow you to co-locate, or that the coverage you're proposing can't be covered from those other two towers. The area of your coverage can't be covered by those other two towers. Am I right?
I would think
That's what they're
so.
required.
The only question I would ask, I'm sorry, with Steve as well, is how does the ordinance treat towers as approved but unbuilt? Is an unbuilt tower still considered a co-location under the ordinance?
I wouldn't not think that that's considered a co-location option at this time. We don't know if it will be built. It's approved.
All right, so it has to be based upon propagation tables
Existing.
as they exist.
It would have to be
on
existing.
Existing structures. Okay.
We still got the map though that shows all these other towers, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up and running on this map.
So is the
reasonable to ask the applicant to check with the proposed and the existing to see if you could co-locate, if it would cover?
I mean, I don't have any problem with the application.
He's looking at the map from the
Our regulation requires him to certify that he's checked these things and they're not available.
Well, if you want to provide the applicant the benefit of tabling the matter for the next regularly scheduled meeting so he could obtain that information, so you can make a decision, that's something
Would
the
you
PC
be
can do.
amenable with that?
Yeah,
We'll
absolutely.
table it to the next,
Yep, absolutely.
make a motion to table it to the next meeting, which is
20th.
20th.
Or
Motion and support to table the request until our next meeting, which is January 20th. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Would it be possible to get a copy of that map that wasn't included in the if there are many towers up there?
Okay. Our next item of business is Heritage Cove Farm. Steve, you wanna?
Sure. One of the things that we, as staff, we were trying to figure out how we could assist with the discussion this evening, because I think there were a lot of topics that were talked about at the last one, and there were a lot of questions that kept coming around, and it became circular. And it seems like it's important to get to three basic questions as to what this project is really all about. And what's interesting about this one, obviously this is more meetings than you typically have on a topic, and this is a more complicated application than you typically see. And it's interesting too that one of the main questions that I think I heard last time at this level was the discussion focused around a question in the site plan review or special use permit review that you typically it's typically a lot more straightforward. When you get proposed a retail use, it's pretty clear that's retail use. That 18.7A, which is the question, let me pull it up here real quick and just read it, because I think this is the one that's the most cumbersome in this, or at least the first and most important question. The property subject to the application is located in a zoning district in which the proposed special land use is allowed. And what we were hearing at the last meeting was a lot of discussion about, is this a convalescent home? And in the Ag Forest District, is this a cabin colony? Is this a club? I think typically it's a lot more straightforward. You'd go over that, and what the proposal was, it was a lot less discussion. So in this case, proposed three questions for you, and I just sent you a memo that we just typed up today. It's on your desk. And they're the questions that we heard going on in the conversation last time, and just what we would anticipate happening in this application. Number one is, in the MAF district, or the Agriculture Forestry Management District, does the proposed use meet the definition of a convalescent home? And I think, and this is just a proposal to maybe facilitate the conversation, if you can focus on that question and maybe do an up or down vote if you feel that that's appropriate, at least get a resolution to that question, then you can kind of move on to the Lake and Stream Zoning District and address those uses also. Now, it may bring up other things, but right now it's just a matter of defining the uses and agreeing that they are or aren't the uses that they're proposing. So I think to get beyond that point, that's the next question that you are going to come to in your findings of fact as you work through them. But maybe instead of focusing on exactly reviewing the language of the findings, because these are drafted based on what you all believe, or drafted for in anticipation of what you vote on in the end, maybe it would just be helpful to have that conversation, that discussion about whether or not this is a convalescent home and whether it meets that definition. The other memo that we just provided to you briefly is just a proposed general finding to add. We did some research on this. We're always looking for what might assist with this, and one of the things that we were talking about was that section 9.3.14, which is the nursing or convalescent homes section of the zoning ordinance, which basically states that in the ag forest zoning you can have a nursing or convalescent home. So we looked a little bit at the history too, because I know at the last meeting there was some discussion about what is infirm and what definition will you use for infirm. Is it mental? Is it physical? And one of the things we went down a different avenue to look at some of the history behind that approvals by this body, both either the old Planning Commission or the old Zoning Commission. And in 2001, we found an approval that was for a group home. Actually, it was an adult daycare home, adult foster care home where residents lived there. And it was for the developmentally disabled. And it was approved under the 9.3.14 convalescent home section. So with that, it's a proposed finding that Cheboygan County has approved uses under the Cheboygan County Zoning Ordinance section 9.3.14, nursing or convalescent homes, which included patients with mental illnesses. As applied under this ordinance, convalescent homes include the housing and treatment of patients with mental illnesses. Based on the previous approval, based on the way the definition is written, it's a suggestion that you may want to consider that past definition. I think we've reviewed this with legal counsel, and there's that precedent is strong that is how you've ruled in the past, and it should be how you would look at it similarly this time.
And that's really as applied by there. So it doesn't require you to go and do any type of interpretation or use, because you've already utilized the ordinance in a manner which includes, as part of the infirmity argument, approval under that section for convalescent homes, which included a group home for people with a mental disability. So you already have, as part of your application under the ordinance, it's already been done. I think that basically resolves that issue.
Just one question.
Yeah.
Let's say we looked at a project just like this one and we did approve it, only we find that we maybe shouldn't have done that for some reason or other. Does it mean that we've made that past practice that we have to do it again? If we make an error and consider it one way and find out that wasn't correct after it's happened, does that mean every time one comes up we can continue to make that error?
No, it's
Okay.
not.
How do you get around that point?
You get around that point by looking at the type of error that was made. All right, is it something that is clearly off the wall that doesn't make any sense? For example, you have a use that allows for a gas station, but you say, all right, well, this pet grooming store is close enough to a gas station. That clearly is contrary, to the language in the ordinance. Here, we're kind of looking at something that's not even necessarily in the definition. You're looking at a definition of something that's within the definition here, and so it makes it easier for you to look at your past practice to see how it was applied, and is that past practice contrary to logic and reason, or would a court say that's logical, would be supportable? And there are cases on that as well. This would appear to be a logical and supportable basis for the application of the ordinance.
Because we've made some errors, and I hate to think we have to continue those.
No, not every error needs to be continued.
I think the thing that becomes confusing for me sometimes is that we come into these things and then we have to look at these different definitions, and you have sometimes conflicting definitions. Like you may present a definition from the legal side and say, well, this is pretty much precedent, and then as other people present definitions, they say, well, from the legal precedent of our side, that really doesn't make much sense. And so I think our job all the time as commissioners is to listen to that and try to make some common sense out of that. And so I think there's some room for differences of opinion sometimes when you get into that. And that's my own personal opinion. And this one is even more complicated by the fact that you could potentially say, well, I don't believe that it meets the definition of a convalescent home, but on the other hand, maybe I could, under the special accommodations, say, yes, I think that under special accommodations, I could allow this particular event to occur in that district. So it's not as easy as meets the eye. It'll be an interesting discussion.
You're right, there are several different tentacles on this thing, so that's part of the reason why Steve suggested that we kind of maybe get through one of those that makes
I don't disagree with the process, and the information is helpful.
I just want to add that we're looking at two different levels here. One of them is the regulation itself and what the regulation says. That's our foundation that we've got to work on. If we don't agree on what that regulation is saying, then there's a means to resolve that. we buck it over to the ZBA for determination as to what that regulation really means. If we're talking about whether the use that we have here fits the use as described in the regulation, that we can debate all we want, and you can look at it one way and I can look at it the other way. But if we don't agree on what the regulation actually says, if we've got a question of the determination of the definition of those terms, you can't have one interpretation and I have another, and we go our separate ways on making the final determination in the whole shebang. We got to work on the same terms. That regulation means something, and if we don't agree what it means, then somebody has to make that determination, and then we both have to live with that determination.
I would agree with you that we both have to live with the determination. With all due respect, I always thought about this as a process where each individual planning commissioner has a variety of input, and in the end, they have to use the common sense that they have to put this together to make sense of it, and then we would take a vote, okay? And then my job is, let's suppose the group doesn't agree with how I feel about it. We take a vote, but then if that vote should stand, even though I may disagree with it, then we're in support of that. I mean, I don't walk away and say, well, I'm not going to do that. I say that is the decision of the group. I understand it. We had our day in court, and okay, I can support that.
But what I'm saying is, though, the regulation itself, if there's a dispute as to what the terms of the regulation mean, we can't each individually make up our own mind what it means and go our happy way. If there's a dispute there, then it has to be resolved. If I say if the regulation says the foundations of this building have to be blocks 6 inches wide, 8 inches high, and 16 inches long, and they have to be firm blocks, and I go out and I get some cinder blocks and I get some concrete blocks, and you go out and you chop some ice out of the lake out there because it was 20 below zero and make it into blocks. We got a dispute there as to what the term means, and we better resolve that, because you might be right if you're building on the North Pole, but you wouldn't want to do it here for very long. And our regulation specifies that determination, that finalization of what that means, has to be made by the ZBA if we can't agree on it here.
Well, which term? Because it has to be a term contained in the ordinance.
The terms contained in the ordinance, the definition of the terms in the ordinance. If we're going to disagree on what infirm means, you can't have one interpretation of it and I have another, and you're making your decisions based on your determination and mine on my determination. We got to be using the same definition.
Does the majority rule in that?
No.
Civil council?
You're going to have different views on how the regulations apply, all right? And the other thing we have going on here is we have a status conference with a judge that apparently is not quite happy down in Bay City on the 22nd. Not that I'm not the attorney, of course, on that case, Mr. Kazan is. And, you know, if you're suggesting that we go to the ZBA, frankly, I think you're kind of out of time to be able to do that.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that we've got to be looking fast. We've got to be working off the same interpretation of the regulation, the basic regulation, not whether this fits those definitions, but we have to be using the same definitions.
Well, Chuck, are you saying that then we have to argue every point out till we reach 100% total agreement?
No, but we got into a big discussion on what infirm meant.
Mm-hmm.
And we were going to have several definitions and make a choice. That term infirm is in the regulation, and it's something that's basic to what we're trying to decide. And if you're going to use one definition and I'm going to use another, we got problems. Because our regulation, if you go to the tail end of the county zoning ordinance, it tells you what the ZBA is there for. And one of the major things it's there for is to make a determination when there's a dispute on the terminology and the interpretation of the regulation, the zoning regulation. That's what they're there for.
I guess I've just never been involved with a discussion about terms where you have 20 people sitting around and everybody can say, I agree with that term. Exactly, that's what it is. I think you're going to have quite a bit of discussion on that. And, and we're presented with differing opinions from very credible people. And so sometimes it isn't simple to simply say, well, okay, I'm always
It
going
may
to
not be
believe
simple,
Peter.
but if we've got it,
I'm always going to believe the other council.
What
And I
I'm
have
saying-
other input from people coming in here. And I have to weigh that all.
what I'm saying though is if we have a dispute amongst ourselves and we can't agree on the terminology, what it means, then we've got to resolve that.
If we have a different interpretation, we can't stay on this forever.
No.
If we have a different interpretation, I think that we're going to have to decide amongst us with a vote if it includes whatever it's going to include and move on, because we can't all go to your board and put everybody back. I think there's been a lot of
It isn't
discussion.
very often that we ever had one.
No, and this is,
No.
and we've got some good definitions now that Steve has come up with. It's given us some time to think about what we've already done, maybe what the intent was of the original people. I mean, we have time to look at that. So I don't think we all have to agree exactly, but I think the majority is going to have to agree before we go on. Is that where
Yes,
we are?
that's going to be on all the standards.
Okay.
I mean, I don't expect you.
The
you to-
definition
yeah,
is no
so,
different
you know,
than the rest of the standards then.
And I understand.
it's a threshold issue. I mean, that's why Steve has brought it up, and it's
Right,
important for
it's
you
still-
to get that going. So that should make it then easier for you then to go through the balance of the findings there and say, well, one of you say, I'm going to make a motion on, I'm going to select A, C, and D, and that this will not or will support this standard. We just kind of go through it. I mean, I think it's been well talked about at this point.
Okay, well, I was one that was concerned about infirm. I've done some research,
Yep.
looked at different dictionaries, and I feel at this point that it includes mental as well as physical. So I'm over that hurdle with what's been done. It's not saying everybody is, but I'm there at least.
I make a motion that this definition be approved and put in as one of the findings of fact.
To include mental.
To include mental. I got that in.
There are actually three definitions of the term already proposed for you in the general findings.
You can include all three of them. All
Yeah.
three include mental.
I would support that.
And then the only thing I would add to that is almost all three of them, when they have the reference to mental, they also have the caveat that the mental is directly or somehow indirectly related to the element of age. So there is some qualifier in there, so it's not as just clear as saying that definition specifically says infirm mentally.
If I may read the actual, we have that in our definition already. Convalescent or nursing home is a home qualified for license under applicable Michigan law for the care of children, aged, or infirm. So it's already, if you're looking for a definition of convalescent home, that's already.
Right.
And I understand that, and I will also tell you I spent a fair amount of time looking at every definition I could find, and the vast majority of definitions I looked at included some inference to the term infirmity as it relates to age. So it's one that you have to sort of sort out in your own mind too, and all I'm saying is I believe it will affect the decision. I enjoy the conversation. Chuck, I don't mind having it. I'm just saying that may not prevent me from voting my conscience.
Okay, we have a motion and support to agree on the definition of firm to include the mentally handicapped, correct?
Correct.
And Chuck, you held this up. Are you asking?
This is the one the proposed one that we had on the desk today. Is the one I'm proposing to.
Okay,
Hold on.
Yeah. Let me see if I got that one.
And this is
Yeah,
the one
that's-
directly from our ordinance?
What's that?
This one that you gave us?
No, this is
That was handed on your desk today, yeah. I read it.
no, this is not what's in the ordinance.
Proposed general finding.
Okay, all right.
That aspect.
Okay, we have motion and support. Everybody on the same page here? Everybody understand? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay. Now, shall we answer Steve's questions before we go any farther? In the Forest Ag District, does the proposed use meet the definition of a convalescent home?
Yes.
Okay. Everybody agree?
Hang on, let me just read this for a second. Yeah, I would say if it was voted on that the infirm is as you describe it, then I would say it could fall under convalescent.
Okay, Lake and Stream District, does the proposed uses meet the definition? Cabin colony,
Yes.
everybody agree?
Well, the cabin colony is a difficult one because it's defined differently in the two different zoning districts. In one, we're talking about a cabin colony, and it's a housing, I forget what it's called, housing or something else, and it was analogous to the use of a convalescent home, and then just on the other side of the coin, the exact same housing community is now listed as a different, analogous to a different use. And I don't believe that just by separation of the two zones you can automatically say they're called the same, they're going to be the same use, they're going to provide therapeutic treatments to these people, but we're going to call them something in two different districts. And they're the same component, two different districts, and I think that sets out a real dilemma for how we're going to proceed ahead in zoning. And I'm pretty new at this, so that's just what I thought.
The use, the cabin colony under 1033 is an allowed use in the Lake and Stream Protection District. There's no question about that. That's what 1033 is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're going to fall back on the discussion of Archer Steel and whether a cabin colony, which is a housing use in the Lake and Stream Protection District, that's what it is. You're housing people in those cabins.
Mm-hmm.
Is that use the same as if there's cabins over in the MAF district?
Yep, exactly.
It is. Now you can call them two different things if they're the same, if they're a use that's authorized under that terminology in that district. You can't say, one's an Appaloosa and one's a Mustang or something else.
I think that's precisely my point.
But you can't turn them down under Archer Steel because that use that you're specifying here in the Lake and Stream is an authorized use, and it's called in the Lake and Stream District a cabin colony.
Well, then the applicant goes on to say, okay, why don't we try a menu here?
We haven't gotten.
We're asked specific questions.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we have to answer those specific questions so that as we go through the findings, we can use those to handle our findings, whether the findings are correct or not.
Well, I'm not sure I understand it, but let me just finish my thought. But But long term, then you set up in your zoning, when you have this menu approach, that people say, well, this dwelling, we're going to call it analogous to here. In this, we'll call it, it's the same dwelling exact, but in this one, we're going to call it a cabin colony. Oh, and by the way, if that doesn't work, we're going to call it a clubhouse. And guess what? If that doesn't include it, we'll call it a club. And if that doesn't, we'll call it a doghouse. And we can just keep going down this route. And it just creates havoc for us in that other people will have that door wide open to do that also. And it just seems to me a circumvention of just a standard, straightforward way to do zoning. And I just don't believe that's where we want to go.
It makes it very difficult.
Yeah, it does.
What you have to look at is the use. What is the actual use that you're looking at in that district? Whatever you call it, it doesn't make any difference. Is that use an authorized use in that district? Is it or isn't it? You may call it, and I'll give you a problem you haven't even come up with, but restaurant, bar, and what's the one in
Dining establishment.
Recreation and eating establishments. That's the term in agriforest. We haven't even looked at that term yet, but there it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're all the same thing. I mean, they're eating establishments. We can call them it. We can change the regulation eventually, but we can't change it right now. We've got to live with it the way it's written. And we've got to look at the use. That's what the whole problem is here. What is the use that they're using in that spot? And then is that use authorized in that district? And if it's a piece of a whole, like the cabin colonies are obviously housing for the convalescent home, if we agree that the convalescent home is what they've got over there in the ag forest,
Mm-hmm.
then is it an accessory use to the convalescent home?
Even though it's not listed as a use that is allowed in now.
What is the use? Is it being used as an accessory to the authorized use in the other district? Is it or isn't it?
Well,
But it's not allowed.
even though it is, it doesn't matter under the conveyor.
It doesn't
belt.
matter because it's authorized there
That's right.
under that term.
No.
Right.
But what I'm looking at is he's going to go across to the other side and he's going to say cabin is not authorized for
Exactly.
residential
And
use.
so he's going to call that.
Because the only thing in forest ag is either
Right.
under use by right is private hunting and fishing cabins, or commercial under use by special use permit. Commercial hunting and fishing cabins. So you're going to say, okay, but we have a definition of cabin in our regulation, in definitions. The use that is being put to fits that definition of a cabin. But the use as an authorized use in the ag forest, because you've defined it as hunting and fishing cabins, either by right or by special use, it isn't a hunting and fishing cabin. It isn't being used as a hunting and fishing cabin. But then you're going to say, okay, but it's a housing unit. Is it a part of the convalescent home? And if it's a part of the convalescent home, then housing is part of the convalescent home, and it is an authorized use over there. Call it whatever you want.
And I just say that's not a straightforward way of looking at it. And what will happen is that we will have, this sets up an open door to have this many discussions, because people will come in
No,
and
it
say,
doesn't.
okay, tried this out in this area, and if that doesn't work, how about this, and how about that, and how about that?
Okay.
And pretty soon it is very confusing to people, and I'll just
You still got to
shut
look
up
at the
here and
use. The
keep
underlying
going.
question is, what is the use?
I understand what you're saying, Chuck. You don't have to go over it. I understand what you're saying, and you make a good point. Make a good point. But there's a different way to think about this too.
Okay. In Lake and Stream District, does the proposed use meet the definition of club?
No.
In Lake and Stream, does the proposed use meet the definition of country club?
No.
I believe so.
In Lake and Stream, does the proposed use meet the definition of restaurant?
I say no.
I don't think so.
No.
Not under the definition the way we've got it defined.
Okay. Lake and Stream, does the proposed use meet the definition of multifamily duplex?
I don't think it's even relevant.
Yeah, I don't even know why that's there, because we're talking cabin colony. Steve?
That's their
That
application.
was theirs.
All of these are listed uses that they're requesting approval for.
Okay, well, it's definitely not.
Well, they do have duplexes. They've got two
Units on the same
units
roof.
under the same roof.
Yeah, you can address that. So.
But I'd say yes, because they do have two family units or whatever you're going to call them.
2 units.
The units.
2 units.
In the same building.
I have researched the definition of duplex in some other dictionaries. We don't have duplex defined in the ordinance. I can read those to you if you would like.
That might help.
Fire away.
Okay. Under the Merriam-Webster dictionary, it is duplex is defined as having 2 principal elements or parts. In the Oxford Advanced American Dictionary, a residential building divided into 2 apartments.
Okay.
And then finally, the Cambridge Academic Content Dictionary, it is a house having 2 separate apartments, each with its own entrance.
No, is it, would it
It's 2 of those.
Yeah, the only thing is that I'm a little confused about is would a duplex of this multi-family dwelling, would they have any other requirements, like they would be a standalone living environment, like they have to have a kitchen, they have to have this, they have to have that, and they have to that, then they're living and dwelling in them, versus having I can sleep there, but that's it.
That's true. It has to meet the definition of cabin for cabin colony.
I can't remember.
Yeah, it's right here. I'll show it to you.
Okay.
Here's the cabin.
This one gets sticky, yeah.
A building 10 or similar structure which is maintained offered a use for dwelling or sleeping quarters is a cabin.
I have the floor plans that the applicant has put into the
These floor
applications
plans
up on
do
the
not
screen.
show a duplex floor plan. These are 2 bedrooms suitable for residents of 2 individuals, but they're not separate living quarters, so therefore the multifamily duplex doesn't apply.
Yeah. I go on that. Doesn't need it.
Okay, so we're back to no.
Back to no.
All right. And Steve's question number 3. In the Lake and Stream District, does the therapy accessory use as described meet the definition of accessory use to cabin colony, dining, restaurant?
No.
No.
Okay. Now that we've determined those, we can go back to our findings.
Eventually.
Incidentally, I think that was helpful.
Good.
I think that's going to help us
One question.
trying to get through this.
If we're looking at findings and we have included findings from Planning Commission, Civil Council, and the opposition, if we choose one that we haven't done or you haven't done, is that something that's defendable to you because the Planning Commission made it part of the findings?
Oh, if you, I mean, you're always welcome to draft your own findings. That's why you have, and I think Ms. Powers was kind of confused here. That's why you have the blanks on here that say the Planning Commission finds, because sometimes members are going to be writing in their own material on that.
It's just never happened that we've utilized that opposition.
We have on occasion, I think.
But
make sure it ties into an exhibit. That's all.
We've rarely had such well-organized opposition.
In any project, right, okay.
Okay, are there any changes, with the exception of the addition of the one that was presented tonight? Any changes we want to make to the general findings?
Yes.
I kind of think that. Okay.
Okay. Where do you want to start?
Start at the top and work down.
General findings? Okay.
Yeah.
I got no problem with 1. I got no problem with 2.
We already approved those findings.
Yeah. 3. 4 was okay. 5 was okay. 6 was okay. 7. Okay, 7. I would propose adding to 7 statement. There's been no information furnished which indicates the necessity of hundreds of acres to accomplish the stated purposes of therapeutic farms of this type.
I think I'd go along with that.
So do I.
Yeah, I don't see any problem with putting it in there. The only reason 7 is in there is to show that other ones are larger. So there's really
but
no reason to put it in there or leave it out. But I don't have a
leave it
problem.
out or add this because
One of the two. I have no
that
problem.
tries to lead you in one direction, which I don't think is a valid way to go.
It's a fact, but not necessarily a pertinent fact.
The only thing that I may add there too, then the size was put in there because I think then it becomes difficult to say that if you have something very small compared to something that's a very large operation that is staffed differently, is a running organization that's very successful, it's like an apples and apples comparison right now.
What does that have to do with the land use?
What has that to do with the size? There was nothing said that there was a requirement to be 500 feet away from a building or 1,000 feet away from the buildings. There was nothing said that it was safer to be 1,000 feet away versus 450 feet, which
Sure.
these are, by the way.
Yeah, I don't think that information exists, but I think that there was, as I read about this Gould and stuff, they talked about the large buffer zones that they had between them and the population around them in this farm, and the population did support the farm, whereas we're in a little different situation. We have kind of the opposite. We have a much smaller footprint, and I don't know how this is going to come out, but the community right now seems to be at odds around supporting it just because the nearness of this community as different from these other bigger communities. And I'm not making a judgment that it's going to go bad or it could go very good. I don't know. I'm just saying that's what
I'm just saying
is
there's
important
been no
here.
information furnished that shows that the extra hundreds of acres are necessary. Nobody's shown that. They've just said that these others are bigger.
I would agree with that, but you can't then make the inference that none of the larger area is a direct result why people are
But
comfortable
you're
with it.
leading to that conclusion by leaving it the way it stands. This is just giving the other side of the coin.
Mm-hmm. I don't have a problem with what you said.
I don't have a problem putting it in because it means nothing whether it's either remove this one or it really does. It just offsets the size limit because we don't know for certain if 300 acres is better than
No.
450. And what he's
No.
saying is there's really no evidence that says that the 300 acres is any better. It's presumed by the people that testify that larger parcels provide better isolation and protection and those kinds of
Yes.
things. So
Yes.
I'm not certain that what Chuck wants to insert would be a problem, because we can have the testimony of the public is already put in here that they're worried about because of the size and the safety issue. So probably the impact is negative either way.
Yeah, and I say it because it's very similar to, I mean, they don't locate a big maximum security prison, and this is obviously not a good comparison what we're trying to do here. In the middle of an urban area, they don't do that.
But these are general findings of fact. Certainly you do. It's a fact that people are concerned about the possibilities that could arise from this, and it's a fact that nobody has proven that that the size makes any difference.
Right.
So I would go along and support Chuck by adding that, because it's not significant whether it's there or not.
Yep, I don't have a problem with it either.
Okay, Chuck, next.
Okay. Going on to 9 and 10, I would delete 10 and use 9 only because the yellow, it's essentially the same thing until they get to the last yellow paragraph there.
Go to 9, eliminate 10.
Yeah, use 9.
They're really the same.
They're the same, but
Did we deal with 8?
8's fine.
8's fine.
I thought it was too.
8's fine. Use 9, delete 10. 11, after the black, well, after 11, I would add, Planning Commission finds that cabins proposed in the MAF district are not, in fact, the residential component of the convalescent home as authorized by the SUP in this district. Planning Commission finds that the cabins proposed in the agricultural forest district are in fact the residential component of the convalescent home authorized by the SUP in this district.
You want to add that to the end of this?
To the end of 11. In other words, this is getting back to John's comments where he doesn't like the cabins versus cabin colonies because they're the same use. I'm saying that the use in the ag forest district for these cabins is the residential component of the convalescent home.
Essentially the accessory use.
Right.
The accessory use to the convalescent home.
I think it would be better to use that term, accessory use.
Okay. Change that to accessory use.
Your impact with that is to, or what you expect is to clear up the two definitions.
The two definitions of the same use. The basic use is an accessory use to the convalescent home for residences in either district. We call it one in one and something else in the other, but the use is the same.
Okay.
Okay. 11 or 12 is verbose, but I have no problem with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, 14, and the numbering is going to change on these things, but just so we can identify what we're talking about here. I would propose deleting 14. That's the staff's reading. And use, which is 16 on here, which is Powers' terminology, as substituting for 14. add to that paragraph, the Planning Commission further finds that a convalescent or nursing home under this definition does not require it to be contained in a single structure.
I think there was some additional information later on about that.
It was, but I think it's,
Is that why do you want it there?
well, because it
kind of combines two of them. There's another one that's a standalone later on that says that. Maybe it was 14.
then 15 I have no problem with. We've already agreed on that, I think.
Okay, so what's your intent?
Just establish the fact that the housing units don't have to be
On one.
under one structure.
Chuck, would you like to duplicate 18.7A number 4 on page 11, which says the Planning Commission finds that the CCZO, the zoning ordinance, does not restrict the number of structures which are part of a convalescent home.
It's saying the same thing.
You want to just duplicate that in the general findings?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's already going to be in
It's in the,
Yeah, it's in there.
it's needed in the general plan.
well,
We don't need it, okay?
Well, there was
you should be using the general plan to support the others.
Okay.
yeah, there was some information where I think it was at Brooks, where we
Park has 3 separate buildings.
yeah, it was 3 separate buildings, so I mean that would make sense.
Okay, 17 I would delete. I think we're going to come to the conclusion it's right under the main convalescent home rather than trying to get it someplace else.
Then in 18, there's an error in the numbering.
Yeah.
Chuck, you want to delete 17?
9.3.14.
What do you say?
Where it says 9.3.4.
Didn't we talk to that once?
I thought we had 17 covered someplace else.
No, 17 is covered in 18.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I did it.
Yeah,
I was
which
going
is
to leave
it.
18.
What's that?
I was going to leave 18.
Leave 18, but
Leave
we
18.
on the second line it says 9.3.4 and it should be 9.314.
9.314.
But keep 18 and delete 17.
Yeah, with the change of the direct.
9.314.
Yeah. Yeah. 19 I leave alone. I'd use the staff one for 20 in place of 20. And on A and B,
Hey, hang on, let me just review that here for a quick second. We're going pretty fast. There's a lot of stuff.
is the flip side of 19, and I'm proposing to keep 19, so I'm deleting 20.
Okay.
Now,
So you want to keep the staff comment?
I want to keep the staff comment was referring to 20 and basically saying that the 19 is correct.
So delete the staff comment and 20 both.
Well, staff comments weren't intended to be findings, so
Yeah.
if you delete that finding 20, that'll delete the staff comment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing is, and I don't know where we talk about it. I think it comes up later on, but I have some feelings around this county master plan and Tuscarora and all that I'd like to discuss.
That's A and B right at the bottom of the page here.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Part of 20.
Yeah. So I'm going to, I don't care what you call it, but I'm going to substitute in place of A and B at the bottom. The commission finds that Tuscarora Township has developed its own master plan, and that this plan has been recommended to be utilized as a guide for rezoning amendments pertaining to Tuscarora Township under the Cheboygan County Master Plan. Page 20 and 21 in Exhibit 155. The commission further finds that the application under consideration proposed no rezoning, but rather questions of appropriate land use under the current regulation as written.
I think that's on.
I think we're going to have a little discussion about that maybe later on, and I do agree.
Now's the time.
Now's the time.
Now's the time.
I'm proposing this as a finding.
Because
As a replacement for 20.
There's a replacement for A and B, really.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
well, part of this may come. I mean, if I understand what you're saying, right, part of this may come up as a discussion on this reasonable accommodation, because we will make reasonable accommodations on a lot of this stuff as we go through making decisions about the expansions of some of these definitions to allow them to use these similar to what we just talked about across these two zoning districts. So,
The contention is that we should be following the Tuscarora Township Master Plan and their planning commission's recommendation that this be turned down.
yes, I understand.
But the master plan refers to rezoning matters. If we're going to rezone something, then I agree that we should be following the master plan. And in this case, it should be the master plan of Tuscarora Township.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not rezoning. We're not rezoning anything. We're trying to apply the regulation as it's currently written to the situation we've got at hand. If you don't agree with the regulation, then we're going to have to sometime change the regulation. But the regulation is what we've got to go by right now.
Sure.
And not, the master plan has nothing to do with these decisions we're making here.
Well, that, with all due respect, I have a little bit of difference with you. I understand your concept there, but we started down the master plan concept a long time ago. I particularly wasn't fantastically excited about master planning. I've been involved. I don't have a huge amount of use for it, but what we were told in the master planning process, and we paid a ton of money to go out and do this. We had meetings all over the community. We had community involvement. We got groups of citizens together, and we got all of the input that they had. Okay? And I believe that the people in Tuscarora Township are the closest people to this problem. I'm once removed. I'm not an electric representative. I haven't got a horse in the race here. They do. They got a lot of horses, and we had about 150 people in that community, or how many ever it was, say, listen, we don't really want this. It is part of the master plan that we've talked about. We were at the meetings and we made some decisions around that. And now what we say is, I'm sorry, toss that out. And we've done this not too long ago. We tossed one of these out too. So I begin to say, I believe that the master plan has some credence. I don't think that's the only thing we should use, but I don't think we should take the input of a community that we just asked and just simply say, forget you people. We have this, and that's what we're going by. Because then I say to you, let's get rid of the master plan and we will decide. And I don't care either way we do it, but I think we wasted the money on the master plan, so. And I didn't do that to make a grandstand either. It's just a feeling I've been.
Yeah, I kind of
with
felt
a
the
long
same
time.
way, and Steve read me something from that master plan, and I don't know where you found that. That talked about what decisions that should include. Do you have that again so we could maybe clear that up? Because I actually felt that the Tuscarora Township should have weight, even though they're not elected, and neither are we as the Planning Commission. We spend a lot of time, but there's something in there that says we should use them for such purposes, and one of them maybe wasn't for.
Are you talking the reference in the master plan?
Yeah, the section where we had the use of Tuscarora's plan to make these to not make these kind of decisions. You talked about rezoning, Chuck talked about rezoning and conditional rezoning. That's why we took that under advisement. The last one we talked about it on went out on 68 or something. I'm just wondering what that says. That would clear that portion of it up, and I think Civil Council also alluded to administrative reviews or something. And I just so we can get that cleared up, because it's an important issue, because I'm sure Tuscarora residents think we should use their plan, and if it doesn't say that we should in this, there's something in our master plan that's actually describes what we should use their plan for. And again, you alluded to that.
I did.
Maybe you could.
I don't have it in front of me.
But maybe you can bring back up what your
the analysis of the language, I think, is pretty clear, and the way Chuck has presented it is the way it's written in there. And that's why it was very important on the Griswold Mountain issue, because that was a conditional request for rezoning, which is a completely different thing. This is an administrative process, so you're administering your ordinance as written, and you have to follow the rules and regulations contained in the ordinance.
And typically at this stage, when we get this kind of feedback, it is very important. It is weighed very heavily, as it says in the master plan, that Tuscarora Township's Planning Commission does have a lot of weight. Typically what we would do in a situation like this, we'd receive that comment. It wouldn't necessarily change the plan that you have in front of you, but it's a good indication to us that we need to follow up with them. Right now, we don't have a lot of details as to why they feel it doesn't meet their future land use map, but that's what they said. It doesn't meet their future land use goals. So we would follow up with them and find out maybe our the specific goals for that area aren't appropriate, or at least the goals are appropriate. Maybe the ordinance in that area isn't appropriate. So it's a matter for us to go back and look at it as a zoning ordinance amendment. Maybe we craft something in partnership with the Township Planning Commission and fix that for the future.
So that's not to be used in administrative decisions like this one, and it says that somewhere.
Well, township level land use planning is that. This is the section of the master plan where it talks about Tuscarora Township being somewhat different, because it does have a planning commission, although the county has zoning jurisdiction. And while Tuscarora Township has formed a Township Planning Commission and adopted township level master plan, it has not adopted its own ordinance. County zoning is therefore still in effect for Tuscarora Township. According to Michigan statute, zoning must be based on a plan in order to legally be valid. Because Tuscarora Township has undertaken its own master plan, it is recommended that the Tuscarora Township master plan be utilized by Cheboygan County for developing land use and zoning recommendations for that community.
Which would clear up that we wouldn't use that as an administrative review on the existing ordinances.
Correct. The most recent adopted township future land use map should take the place of more general recommendations developed for the county as a whole. As additional townships become active, they should be part of that planning process too. So, master plans are the guiding. It's a policy book, and it states that right up front. This is a policy book to be used to change the ordinance, but it's not an ordinance by itself.
One other question: who went to them with that request for them to review that plan? Was that us, or was that the applicant?
We mailed out to people within 300 feet. I don't know who approached the Planning Commission. I didn't find out about the meeting until, I can't remember if it was just like an hour before it happened.
It doesn't make any difference. If they
don't know.
Have any administrative review according to the law, then they don't.
Yeah, Scott just reminded me, we do send to whatever township a project is in, they get a copy. The clerk gets a copy of that
But I
application.
mean, sometimes the applicant even goes there before they come to us. I just wondered if that.
They may, yeah.
But they are notified of anything going on.
Yeah, I just look at 2010J, site plans shall conform to all applicable requirements, state and federal statutes, and the Cheboygan County Master Plan.
Yep.
So, I mean, we have different things like this, and I just think it's real confusing when we get to those and we just say, well, the master plan doesn't really have to do with how we administer planning. In that case, I'd say we should not be looking at these state findings of fact and putting master plan things into them that give people the illusion that whatever input they had is going to be used in this process, because it doesn't sound like it is to me. My only point.
All I'm saying is, though, the master plan should guide any rezoning we do. And if the people are not happy with the zoning the way it is, then they can propose something be rezoned or the zoning ordinance be changed.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say the master plan is even more important than that, because it sets the law. I mean, it's the policy document you look at when you set the law that is the zoning ordinance. So the ordinance doesn't change without it being supported in the master plan. So I'd say it's even more important than how it affects each individual project.
The way the regulation is written at that point in time is what you have to go by.
Exactly. Yep.
That's the key to it.
The future land use plan and the future land use map are set for 20 years in the future. As you know, there was that recent rezoning that didn't occur. My understanding is the rationale was maybe further on in the future it's more appropriate, but right now it's not. So to look at a 20-year policy document for regulations that's why it's not a regulation document, the master plan.
Okay, Chuck, you want to continue?
Okay.
Check what page you're on. I kind of got lost.
Well, I was on page 7, substituting that paragraph that I just read you for A and B at the bottom of page 7.
Okay.
You're on 21.
No, I'm on 21. I have no problem with 21. I have no problem with 22 with the insertion of that black line in the middle there that clears up the staff comments down at the bottom. And we maybe should add that statement to the bottom of that paragraph that December 16th, the Planning Commission recognized the applicability of the Right to Farm Act. In this case also.
Yeah, I think we had probably in the minutes, but we could add it to this.
Right.
Yep.
John, can I ask a question?
Sure.
On 22, it says the Planning Commission further finds that neither cabins nor cabin colonies are permitted by right or by special use permit within the farming district.
That's correct.
That's true.
Well, technically it's not true.
Okay.
Technically, cabins are authorized if they're hunting and fishing cabins.
Yes.
So we should change the cabins to hunting and fishing cabinets, nor cabin colonies.
Because
Or
the definition
cabins.
doesn't fit.
Hunting and fishing cabins are authorized, but cabin colonies are not authorized in the MAF district.
But nobody's looking at hunting and fishing cabins, so it's no use putting.
No, but the statement is incorrect. Cabins are authorized in the agricultural forest.
Hunting and fishing.
Just as hunting and fishing.
But when you look at cabins, in the definition of cabins, hunting and fishing cabins do qualify as cabins. So if you're saying cabins aren't authorized, then hunting and fishing aren't.
Well, why don't you put hunting and fishing's are, but cabins
That's
aren't?
what I'm
But
saying.
that's not what you're saying. You're saying to take that other one out. Let's put both what they are. One of them says you can have hunting and fishing,
Okay,
and
and
the
then
other one you
say
can't.
further finds that hunting and fishing cabins
Are allowed.
in the ag forest, but cabin colonies are not.
That works for me.
That's being factual. I had that circled, but
So in this case, we have cabins and cabin colonies that are exactly the same as cabins and cabin colonies in the lake stream, but here they're not going to be permitted, so we're going to call them housings and cottages and make them analogous to a convalescent home, and in another place we're going to call them cabin colonies.
The use is the same.
Now, I understand that, but I'm just saying, very, very confusing, and I don't think it's a good way to go because it creates a substantial problem in people understanding the zoning without us, just like us, talking about this huge
We have some major
discussion.
problems that I feel are there in the regulations, the way they're written, and we'll hopefully someday get them straightened out.
But the whole program here is that cabins are not approved, but hunting and fishing cabins are. That's what this is going to say now, right?
Well, and it would just say that hunting and fishing cabins are authorized in the MAF district,
Right,
but cabin colonies are not.
That's perfect.
Okay.
That's what I'm.
Got it.
Continue.
And that's a correct
It's going
statement.
to clear
It clears it up. Okay, I would propose deleting 23 and using 24. 25 should be corrected to delete 538 because that section has been deleted from the regulation. And I might add that the regulation that is used as Exhibit 154 is not up to date. It's not the most current. It doesn't have several of the most current amendments. I don't think, when I look through them, I don't think anything pertaining to the subjects at hand, but just for information. Just as an extraneous point, this is where restaurant come in, and entertainment and eating establishments is the use in Forest Ag under 935 that's synonymous with what we're talking about. So you've got three different definitions. We got some language problems. We tried to tackle that once before and we didn't get very far. 26 is okay, 27 is okay, the rest of that page is okay as far as I'm concerned. 28, page 28, page 10, 33 should be corrected. Which should be location. And I'm okay with it.
with the change.
With that change. And I think that is not my comments.
All right, does anybody else have anything that they'd like to see changed in the general findings? Okay, can I have a motion to approve the general findings?
So support.
Motion and support to approve the general findings as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, specific findings. Under 18.7. We've been through some of these.
Yeah, we've actually taken action on some of these as approved. Chuck made the motion, I think, we got hung up on one of them and didn't get any further. It was in the minutes. I can't remember which one, so I don't know if you want to go back. We did the Mets and not Mets of the ones we had. but they were in two different forms that time. Now they're all in the same one in line.
Well, we could go down them and
I mean, we could look at the minutes even that showed that I think we approved almost all of the support and at least civil council's not support, except one of those will change now.
I think you were looking at them for whether they were factual, but not necessarily whether they were in agreement. And I think with your answers to some of these initial questions today, you've already somewhat approved some of these.
Right.
You'll go through them and read them, but they've.
Yeah, only one that I see has changed, but because of the definition.
You may want to just, re-ratify it and make sure the language is to your satisfaction and the findings match what you're doing, given some of the changes that you've made. You can do that.
well, we could run through them and then run through the findings that support, the findings that don't support. Then we can.
Yeah, or you have somebody say, look, I'm going to make a motion based on 1, 3, and 5 of wherever you pick it from, and
Do we do that?
either meets or doesn't meet the standard.
Do we do that on met and not met, or do we do that on whether we think that standard is met?
On whether that standard is met. So you can make a motion.
So we actually should go through. We got pages and pages to go through. We should go through. Is that what you're saying? Or
Under 18.7a, you have your basic statement. The findings of support, you can pick out whichever ones of those if you find that it supports that statement, or you pick out the ones that you want if it does not support.
I understand that, but we have. So we're going to go back through all of them.
Well, no, we wouldn't have to. You can
No.
pick them out the way they stand here. If you can, in your own mind, come up with your argument based on what you've got here.
So potentially you make a motion that you say, let's say the findings do not support based on page 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then have a discussion on those, correct?
If we don't have to go through them, I'll make a motion.
You don't have to. Go ahead. If you want to do it.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
I think that's a good way to do it. We'll get the discussion going.
I'm looking at 8.7a. I would indicate that we do not meet that factor under.
Light back on.
Will not support under 1,
Chuck
3, 4, 5, and number
Chuck turned it out.
6 and 10 that I would like to add from page.
Thank you, tremendous.
6 and 10 from the. I guess I can read them. Maybe we got over the calling those two cabins and colonies the same thing because of the use. So I guess I won't include 6, number 10.
From the will not support for section A.
Exactly right. I'm not going to add. Now the 6 and 10 came from the. A reasonable person cannot say that housing on one side is the line is such and such. We already took care of that, so that's other than the fixtures. So that's my motion. 1, 3. We took care of 2. 1, 3, 4, 5 of the not mets.
Yep, here you're right here. Right here, we're talking 1, 2, 3, 5, 7.
Is that the kind of motion?
Could you give us the page on that too?
Okay, it's page 12.
Yeah.
And
It's 1, 3, 4, and 5.
and 6. Sorry.
That doesn't agree with your findings.
Okay.
Your findings.
We changed that.
Yeah, 1 is it meets it. We said that the use is.
I thought we didn't agree on that.
Put it into the.
Okay. All right, I'll go 1, 3, 4, and 5.
From which?
From page
Page
12.
12. The other ones we corrected.
Okay, you're saying this is not,
Not that.
okay.
General findings don't support one. I'd agree on 3. I don't agree on 4. And what's your other one?
5.
5, not 6. It's be 6 hours. So.
I think 6 or 5 is thrown out by Archer Steel. The only one I can see that does not support is the one on the therapy use in the Lake and Stream, number 3. And all the others are thrown out by our general findings and the Archer Steel case.
Which doesn't mean we have to throw them out.
Patty, was there a second?
No.
Probably do that first to continue the discussion.
Do we have support for Mike's motion?
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion?
The only one I can see that doesn't support the standard is the one on the therapy use in Lake and Stream. And I've got a question for our civil council. Can we be looking at any particular uses that we don't feel are supported and treat them separately?
You've already made a decision that it's the convalescent home here, okay?
Right.
And the accessory uses, which Steve has already explained, that go along with the housing. So you've already made that decision as far as the general findings of fact. So the point here is to try and keep it consistent with what you've done already in your general findings of fact all the way through. I think your comments are on point. But I've discussed it many, many times. And, I think that by saying no would be inconsistent, would be problematic on an appeal.
Or would we like to hear it?
Well, I think I'd support the thing. I'd say fine with your motion. I can't agree with your motion, so it's going to have to be a vote. I think that the findings 1 through 8 support. So I can't agree with you.
I don't see it as being consistent with what you've done on your general findings of fact. That's all I can say. So I think it's a
You're saying that
having a negative finding on here, other than because we've discussed it over and over again, the therapy issue, which is pretty clear on there. I think would be a problem given what you've already gone through as far as the general findings. Defer to staff as well and see what they.
Yeah, I would reiterate that a motion not in support of 18.7A isn't supported by the general findings and some of the discussion that you just had.
that's what I'm.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so you're getting
Saying is
reinforcement.
that our general findings offset these because that's the initial, but you agree with 3?
I've got a problem with 3. Yeah.
I mean, 3 being that the therapy use and the PLS.
Therapy use in the Lake and Stream.
I'll revise my motion to include item 3.
Because that narrows your motion. So it narrows it only saying that the therapy use in the PLS is not allowed.
Right, and you only need 1, but that's my motion.
Okay.
So you're doing just 3.
Yep.
So you're not saying that 18.7A is not.
I'm saying it's not met because of item 3.
He's trying to throw the whole thing out
On 1.
because of item 3.
Again, a lot of
You
the general findings that you just adopted don't agree with a negative finding on 18.7A.
Can you explain which one does while we're here?
What do you mean?
Which one of these findings that we have of these 20 would you say doesn't support?
He's saying that the general findings do support.
Okay, I'm saying that I don't believe it does in item 3. I believe it didn't, but we did change some general findings that we maybe shouldn't have changed.
No, we didn't make any findings there. In fact,
Okay, my motion stands, number 3, not met under number 3. Finding does not support the standard 18.7A.
So-
Well, I would say I understood all the discussion we had. We just seem to be at somewhat odds as to how we would agree on each one of these. I contend we've got lots of input from each side, just for the commissioners then to decide how you filter all of that information. And we may have we may agree with Peter on his, we may agree with the council over here on this. What we have put together for ourselves, so I don't think you can just arbitrarily say because 2 or 3 of us say we're throwing it out, that we're going to throw out all the other ones. Because I think we need to take a vote on it.
no, we're not saying that
What
at
they're
all.
saying is that in our other findings, we revised enough of those, so the only one that at least I feel would have impact as not met is item 3. And that's my motion, and
There is support, okay?
Yeah, well, hang on, and with all due respect,
Okay,
I say and I disagree with that.
okay, fine, then you don't have to.
There was a proposal on here to take a vote on
It wasn't, he revised the motion,
I revised the motion, there's no
Okay.
support.
and so finally no support.
We didn't even vote on the first motion.
I revised.
Oh,
He revised the
Revised that
motion.
motion to
It says
include
it will
3.
not support based on number 3 only.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion that the factors do support based on 1 through 8.
I second that.
Okay, we have motion and support that based on that factors do support on number 1 through 8. Do we have any other discussion on that?
Well, all you say is on 1 through 8 that all the findings that were presented on the opposite side don't have any merit.
No, you're not
No.
really saying that. You're just saying that
Could I finish,
based
Chuck?
on 1
Could I
through
finish?
8, you feel that the preponderance is it supports.
Could I finish?
Okay.
Okay, I don't believe we're providing credence to the people who presented that, because I think there are enough information here that we can make a legitimate case for several of these on the other side.
You got to make a decision, though.
But
That's the bottom
But
line.
there
Yeah, I
was no
know.
support to my motion
Yes.
to
No.
findings that will not support, so he's now making a motion that they do support.
And he has chosen items 1 through 8 that they will support the standard of 18.7A.
I understand, I just made a comment on
Would you be
my belief there.
amenable to removing number 7? We're supporting the standard, but the fact that the applicant makes an analogy isn't part of our argument here.
Yeah, I would
1
go
through
on with deleting that. I have a question about it, but
1 through 6 and 8.
yeah, 1 through 6 and 8.
Okay, our motion has been amended to that the findings 1 through 6 and number 8 do support the standard 18.7A.
Is the second okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. If no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, motion
According to by
carried.
voice, by individual.
We can make sure the minutes reflect that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wrote 2
Yeah.
on my notes.
Who they are.
Okay? Okay.
Okay, page 20, right?
You good?
Come on, one by one. Okay. Standard 18.7B,
Hold on, let me roll into
page
that.
20.
Oh, thank you.
The proposed special land use will not involve uses, activities, processes, materials, or equipment that will create a substantially negative impact on the natural resources of the county or the natural environment as a whole.
I make a motion that findings support number 1 and 2.
Do I have support?
Support.
Any discussion?
Would we, the only one there that, I don't know if we amended, I'm not that versed on all of these rules, but the only one I didn't understand real well was the C portion, and I agree with the motion, but the planning commission around this bald eagle thing, I don't have much information on that. I'm not very well versed. Would there be something we would add a criteria that people look at that?
Can I add a couple of comments on that?
Yeah, see, I don't know. I just don't know.
I have comments on that.
I'm sure you do.
The bothering of bald eagles. If the bald eagles are going to be bothered, they'd be bothered by the boat traffic going up and down that river all summer long, continuously yelling and screaming and super soakers. It would bother them a heck of a lot more than whatever traffic is going to be generated by this thing. There's been no information provided on any nesting sites on this parcel. The bald eagles have been seen all over this county, and they're going up and down the shores where people are continuously. And if the people gawking at the bald eagles is a problem, then the Indian River Chamber of Commerce should take the statement that bald eagles are out there and try and bring more people in to watch them. Should be taken out in the first place.
Okay. We have a motion and support that number 1 and number 2 support the findings of standard 18.7B. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, 18.7C. Proposed special land use will not involve uses, activities, processes, materials, or equipment or hours of operation that will create a substantially negative impact on other conforming properties in the area by reason of traffic, noise, smoke, fumes, glare, odors, or the accumulation of scrap metal that can be seen from any public or private highway or seen from an adjoining land owned by another person.
Can I just throw a comment out there before we make a motion? Then I'll make a motion. But the increased traffic in the area would be due to the 13 employees and 3 staff members, and by testimony of the applicant, a couple of trucks per week, small trucks, not semis, and that wouldn't constitute much of an increase in traffic. And we've approved other facilities that have 10 times as much traffic, 10 times as many employees without any kind of a consideration of traffic congestion or traffic problems or require a traffic study. So I make a motion that the factors that do support 1 through 4 be approved, supported.
Hey, hold on, doesn't the traffic study come up later?
Now, if the traffic problems are part of this.
Yeah, it's 18.7F comes up with some increased traffic hazards and cause congestion and all
This
that.
covers it too.
Okay. Well, I'm not concerned about this one, but I'd like to have a little discussion on the half one.
Okay, we have motion and support that the findings 1 through 4 do support the standard of 18.7C. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, 18.7D. The proposed special land use will be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained so as not to diminish the opportunity for surrounding properties to be used and developed as zoned.
I'd like to add one more standard, if that's possible, that we can review. It is that during the public comment, many people spoke that the safety issue, property values, the use of people's property now and after this would go in would be diminished, and I'd like to make that as a standard in here that would not support, because we did have numerous comments on the use of the property. Kids that maybe could use the trail now wouldn't be able to after. People wouldn't be comfortable, worried about those kind of issues. They may not be able to sell. There was a pending sale. If this didn't go through, that wasn't going to happen. And we had a person that was in the business that indicated that could happen. So I'd like to make that as a finding.
Under the will not support.
Will not support.
So that's, I'd make a motion that we find the factors that will support 1 through 4.
Okay, do I have support?
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, I got it. I just went to this page.
Okay, I have motion and support that findings 1 through 4 will support the standard 18.7.D. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, 18.7E. The proposed special land use will not place demands on fire, police, or other public resources in excess of the current capacity, nor increase hazards from fire or other dangers to the subject property or adjacent properties.
I'd like to add another statement. It's a will not support, and that is the testimony from a chief of police that indicated that safety hazard, emergency rooms, and so on are increased. I also would like to refer to Chris Blake, I couldn't tell, as a clinical psychologist that said safety issues are concerned, and also the general public testimony where numerous people testified that there would be additional use, demands on fire, police, and other resources, as well as on other dangers. And I make a motion, and that's a not met, according to the documentation.
Testimony we have.
Based on findings 1 and 2.
It is.
Yes.
We just added number 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Do I have support?
I'll support.
Okay, I have motion and support that the findings 1 and 2 will not support standard 18.7E. Any other discussion?
You're saying
Will not support. Mike added finding 2.
so will not. Yep.
Those 2 findings will not support the standard.
And this could be, if the vote is that it doesn't support the standard, that's when you look at the analysis on the accommodation issue later.
Okay, no other comment? All in favor of the will not support?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, 18.7F, the proposed special use shall not increase traffic hazards or cause congestion on the public or private highways and streets in the area in excess of the current capacity. Adequate access to the site shall be furnished either by existing roads or highways or proposed roads and highways. Minor residential streets shall not be used to serve as access to uses having larger area-wide patronage. Sign, buildings, plantings, and other elements of the proposed project shall not interfere with driver visibility or safe vehicle operation. Entrance drives to the use and to off-street parking areas shall be no less than 25 feet from the street intersection measured from the road right-of-way or from the boundary of a different zoning district. Chuck?
I'd like to add item number 6.
Okay.
The Planning Commission finds that testimony indicates traffic from the facility ultimately built will consist of POV traffic of 13 employees and 3 permanent staff, along with commercial vehicle deliveries by regular delivery trucks, not semis, 2 or 3 times per week.
Okay.
The only other question I had is, it seemed to me that there was some information provided in the any information that we received that there was a snowmobile accident there, and as you drive in there, it's kind of a difficult area. You're coming straight in, but you have the snowmobile trail right there, and then right after that you have to make that turn, and the other way is going straight. And I don't want to make it. I don't want to say you put a huge traffic study into the front of this thing, but along the front of that thing, I think there needs to be maybe a look at that thing to get it properly signed, or to figure out, is there a better way to get people in and out of there without. And that's going to be a problem in summer or winter.
The trail has a stop sign on it.
Mm-hmm.
I can speak from personal experience. 4 days ago, I almost got me a snowmobile.
Yeah.
And I was going 20 miles an hour down the road, and the snowmobile trail crosses right there. The one guy went through and stopped on the one side, and the next guy was doing 60 miles an hour when I got right to him. There's no way to prevent that. They don't pay attention to the stop signs. I went into the snowbank, and he managed to veer off and go up the road, but that is what it is. You can't. I don't know of any solution to that other than put a cop on the corner there and stop the.
You have that situation even on crossroads.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't pay attention to the signage.
The signage is there. I don't think you can do anything with this facility. I mean, they stop before they go out onto the road if they're following the regulations anyway.
Yeah, it's a little different than running down the snowmobile trail and you got a stop sign. That's part of it. But as you're coming in from, I don't know which direction it is, the road sort of parallels and then it turns right away. And if you're not kind of aware, you're looking ahead, all of a sudden you make that turn and bingo, so I don't know if there's
How can
anything
you
that
ever
can be
fix it?
done
I don't
there.
know how you
but-
could fix it though.
We got, you
Well, I
got
don't know. I mean,
problems with other places along
people
the
look at it,
snowmobile
they'll
trail
figure
where-
something out that can be done there.
Be a
I mean,
condition of,
there might be something that can save lives, and not without just saying, "Wow, it's one of those things we just run to keep a couple of people down."
They could change that, put an S curve so that you would try the snowmobile trail would cross the road at a bit more of a right angle.
somewhere else.
Right.
But that'd be something that has to do with the trails, and the DNR would probably regulate that one.
Yeah, I don't know. Just
They
saying.
wouldn't have any money to do
There might be
anything with
there
it,
might
so.
be a contingent plan that they take a look at that and see if there isn't a better way to.
And their right of way is limited to
Right.
that
Sure.
trail. They can't just move it over.
Okay, we have a motion for 18.7F.
I make a motion that findings support 1, 2, 3, 4, and Chuck, 6.
Or
Okay, I have a motion that the findings 1 through 4 and 6 will support standard 18.7F. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, 18.7G, the proposed special land use will be adequately served by water and sewer facilities and refuse collection and disposal services.
Make a motion that the findings support findings 1 through 5.
Motion and support that the findings 1 through 5 will support standard 18.7G. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 18.78 or 7H, the proposed special land use will comply with all the specific standards required under this ordinance applicable to it.
I've got a comment here.
Sure.
It's not really a specific, it's just more of a requirement than a standard. I think we've talked about this in the past here.
Yep.
And other ordinances have similar things there, but it's really not defining, it's more of a statement. And that's why I put in number 1 there. So
We
I
would
think,
vote against it.
yeah, you probably wouldn't matter what, but that's really what it is. So.
Peter, now how does this work? They're going to comply with all specific standards and licenses and stuff like that.
Because you have to.
Right.
Everybody does. So it's basically a statement saying that you have to comply with the laws and regulations as applicable both under the ordinance
Sure.
and under federal and state law.
What happens under the guideline if they have a certain type of clientele and they say, okay, here's what we've decided on, and they find that there's no licensing required at all?
If that's allowed under the law, then they're still meeting that standard.
Because it's not required.
Okay, then we kind of getting back into a discussion is that then you've approved a lot of this stuff on the basis that you're going to have a certain kind of patient with these mental problems, and all of a sudden you have none of that. Maybe you have just a homeless shelter there.
Well, unfortunately, many other agencies, start from the bottom, and you guys are going to be considered on the bottom, as far as zoning approval. They're not going to give a commitment on the licensing requirement. I think that was discussed even in one of the meetings here.
Sure.
That you're not going to be able to get the state to say thumbs up or thumbs down until they see the approval and what the operation's going to be, and then they're going to make their decision.
Right.
The same thing happens when you get for example, for grading or soil erosion. Well, they're not going to bother looking at or stating that we're going to give you a permit until they see whether or not you met the zoning requirements, which will allow you to conduct the grading and so forth. So it's the old chicken and the egg, and you guys are the chicken.
Well, I do have somewhat of a problem with that. I've been involved with businesses before, and you usually have to have a pretty good plan in place before you go to invest substantial amounts of money. So for me to sit here and not know that they don't know the type of clientele they're probably going to end up with, and they haven't thought about it, and they would never even know what that would be. It puts an undue burden on me, and
Didn't they describe it?
Yes.
They did describe it.
Yes.
Yeah, they said that they were going to apply for any licenses that were necessary, and in fact, we're going to try for accreditation over and above the licensing.
But on the other hand, in earlier discussions, they said at public forums that they thought that the type of clientele they would use would not need a license, and they wouldn't need licensing. Then they came back and said they were going to have licensing. Now they've described a lot of different physical things that these people are going to do, and they're sort of diametrically opposed to what they put in there, that they're going to have these schizophrenics, and I don't know even what level that's going to be, yet I'm deciding on all these accommodations that we have to make for a group of people that I'm not sure who we're going to end up with. I hope for the best, don't get me wrong, and I think it could provide a good means for the community, but I will also tell you that if you go out on the internet and you read a little bit, there were a few communities like this that started out with all these exact promises, and it's been a disaster. And I'm not saying this is going to be, but I feel a little bit uncomfortable because some of this stuff I think could have been much clearer, and quite frankly, it wasn't.
Just a comment, I think if this is approved, those can be conditions that we can put. You talked about the road survey. I mean, we can have just the county road look at it, see if there's a recommendation. As far as licensing, you could request the licensing with the most oversight or something. I mean, there's ways you can handle this because it talks about licensing if necessary, and because they said there are ways it can be licensed, we can ensure that they do that as part of a condition of a group.
Hey, and this group has done a good job of that. I mean, we usually look at those things and make good recommendations. So it's not a huge concern of mine.
Okay, back to 18.78.
Make a motion that the backward one supports.
Page 28.
I got it right here.
Okay, motion and support that finding number 1 supports. It's not a standard, but
It's fine.
okay, it's standard 18.78.
I think in this case, we really need to consider both of those statements.
Okay, and I'll add 2 to it.
Okay,
Doesn't make any difference. I'll support that also.
okay.
I mean, it has no bearing.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, is this where we go back to handle the accommodation?
Yeah, I think it would probably be a good time to get something that's fairly specific. You made a finding under 18.7E that standard had not been met. And the finding was pretty much based upon the testimony that you heard from a police officer, as well as, I believe, another mental health worker,
That's
and
right.
as
well as the general public.
And the general public comments. The thing about that is that that's wholly based. The comments were directly based upon the disability of the parties here, which brings us into the accommodation phase of it. Chuck, I'm sorry, did I pick you up?
No, you're getting there.
And so what I did is if you look at page 41, and I cut a lot of the stuff out because I didn't know how this was going to really play out or what we could use. But I figured once I saw that I would try and write something up to help you get through the 18.7.E here. So first of all, I think that it is a risk if you leave it. If that's the reason that it's turned down, I mean that's fodder for the federal case, and particularly under ADA as amended in 2008, as well as the Federal Fair Housing Act. And so the standard I suggest for that is that the Planning Commission finds that the requested modification, and this would be under, if you look at page 41, so to the extent that a modification is requested, is it reasonably necessary to accommodate that disability? Now, you've already determined that there's a disability to begin with, right?
Right.
We already made that decision. So we can, you can add in, let me back up here, page 38. You know, does the person have a disability on page 38? Well, why don't we just do it in order? Yeah, okay. So take a look at page 38. So we have to address it. Does the person or persons, whether the applicant or those occupying the property, have a disability?
And the answer is yes.
Finding is one, yeah.
Okay.
All right, so let's have a motion.
I make a motion that they, A is positive, the finding or supporting it is 1. Support.
Okay, motion and support that A is positive based on finding 1. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Now, the second one, I think we can cut some stuff away here because you were very specific, you know, just on 18.7E. And that's on page 40. Says, is there a modification being requested from the standards and requirements contained in the Cheboygan County Zoning Ordinance based upon a disability? And I suggest the Planning Commission finds that the applicant is making a request for reasonable accommodations and modifications of the standard under section 18.7 lowercase e, and that modification result in the standard being met because of the disability. Of the residents.
Before we go any further on that one, because we're making these accommodations, does that rule out our chance to put conditions on the special use permit?
Not at all.
No.
Not at all. Unless they're ones that conditions that somehow are contrary, you know, to the rules on the reasonable accommodation. But if they're just land based, like you need to have screening here and things like that, no, that's fine.
Like licensing, screening,
Sure.
Have someone
No,
review
that's
the
not
roadway,
gonna impact that. No.
those kinds of things.
Nope. No, you can do that still.
So something about E. It's just there, right there. I didn't see anything on E.
Okay.
Oh, D. I thought I heard E. Let's see.
Do we have a motion for B? Page 40?
I would move that the finding supports based on the modification to the standard made by
Support.
recommended by civil council. Excuse me.
Support.
Actually, Chum Beach that time. Okay, motion and support that the findings support item B based on number 1. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And we move on to C, that says to the extent that a modification is requested, is it reasonably necessary to accommodate that disability? Suggest keeping the first sentence in 1, but then crossing a bunch of the middle out. And from the 4th line up on the bottom here, where it says however, okay? Cross out however, and here's suggested language, and again, you can interrupt or take or make your own suggested findings. But here's what I have. Because the sole reason for not meeting standard 18.7E is because of the mental disability of the residents, a modification allowing this use is reasonable and necessary under the Americans with Disability Act as amended and the Federal Fair Housing Act.
I go along with that.
Making a motion.
I'd make a motion that the standard is met, supported by the finding number 1 as modified using the language that the Civil Council.
I'll support it.
Okay, we have motion and support that finding 1 supports item C, and finding 1 as modified per Civil Council. Supports item C. Or any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I'm working on the next one.
You're working on the next one, okay, that takes care of that one.
But the next standard is, are such accommodations necessary to allow persons with disabilities and equal opportunity to use and enjoy a dwelling? Now we have to specify that to the negative finding under 18.7E. The Planning Commission finds that the mentally disabled residents of Heritage Cove Farm should have an equal opportunity to use the dwellings located in both the MAF and PLS district as a reasonable accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act as amended and the Federal Fair Housing Act.
I would move to endorse the language proposed by Civil Council. I was trying to make notes for that.
That's okay, I wrote it. I think Steve is writing.
Steve's writing that he's
We got a recorder.
Steve's got another recorder, so
Yeah.
all set.
Oh,
Okay,
we hope we
motion
can get
and
it.
support. I want to say this one.
That the reasonable accommodation is needed.
That the reasonable accommodation is needed as per Civil Council's
18.7.
18.7E.
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And the last one, which I'm sure will generate some discussion. Would the requested accommodations impose an undue financial or administrative burden upon the county, and will it fundamentally alter the Cheboygan County zoning ordinance? And again, the issue here is that 18.7.C was determined not to meet the ordinance solely based upon concerns related to the mentally disabled occupants of the property. So is that alone something that would fundamentally alter the Cheboygan County zoning ordinance? Because remember, we're talking about land use here. You have to keep in mind that we're addressing land uses.
I'm not sure if I understand all that, but I thought back on this thing and I said, in terms of accommodations, and we might have some differences of opinion on what I think is an accommodation, but I would say that we've already made significant accommodations throughout the process when we look at this. I mean, we've used definitions and we've expanded those to accommodate the request in terms of things like the nursing convalescent home. That we've looked at the term infirmity, animal pasture areas, barns, workshops, greenhouses. I mean, we've done a lot of things where we have looked at our definitions and we've said maybe they're not quite there, but we are willing to accommodate those, and we are willing to allow this to happen. So I want to first start out that it hasn't been an inflexible, non-accommodating, and now we're at the point where, we have to accommodate everything. But and then we had the discussion around we had these housing units called one thing in one area and one thing in another area, and we said, okay, well, we'll allow that also, even though that's confusing to people. But I do think that when we got to that point, I thought the other things I could follow along, but we got to that point where we start saying things in different areas can be called different things, and then if you'll remember, the applicant came along, and then we had this menu to look at then. Well, if it doesn't fit this, how about fitting that? And if it doesn't fit that one, is it going to look like this? And if it doesn't do that, how about looking about this one? And I think we start falling over into this area where this is a significant administrative burden for us. Look how much time we spent just on trying to define all of this. And so, from that aspect, I think that some of these things have the potential to create significant work for us. And so, from that standpoint, I think there's some merit in saying there will be there will be a substantial effect on the community. Now, whether that's a result of the disability and per se itself, I may not be smart enough to know that. I just say that that's the work out here is going to be maybe substantial to try to straighten this out. And we run the risk of other people coming in and saying, hey, I really like that approach. Here's my zoning request.
I think, John, the only reason that we had the menu approach is because they were asking for a use that wasn't specifically allowed anywhere.
I'm just saying, in my experience, I've never seen anything like that. I wouldn't expect it. Because it says, you're going to turn me down in this area, but how about not turning me down in this area? And how about,
we got the catch-all thing in there. If we didn't have that.
Well, we didn't have the catch-all in the lake and stream.
No, we didn't. No, that's the accommodation part.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It creates a lot of extra work because then people could come back in and say, I've got all these other things you can take a look at, other than a pretty simple process saying, this is my primary use, is it okay or not?
Maybe it'll help for clarity. Some of the reasonable accommodation in this case is just referring to accommodations under the Fair Housing Amendments Act and the ADA for only 18.7E. So a lot of what you're talking about is stuff that's already been decided. 18.7E is about fire, police, and other public resources, and they're asking for that accommodation for that only in this case.
And that's, well, the discussion going, I think the suggestion the Planning Commission finds that based upon the general findings of fact and the specific findings of fact, for both the special land use as well as the site plan standards, although we can leave that out because the site plan, that's not going to be as difficult to address here. That approval of the accommodation under 18.7.E of this project, even if it requires an increased burden on law enforcement, does not fundamentally alter the Cheboygan County zoning ordinance.
Okay, now that we have one that we feel might support, could you help us with one that we feel that it is going to have a significant impact on administration, police, fire, safety, and the future of our fundamental planning zoning process? I think trying to put a round peg in a square hole in all of these situations, we've stretched everything to the max, whether we think it is or it looks like we did that anyway. And I think that in that case, I think we'll have a burden. And I also, and I don't know where this one goes, but I don't think there's reason to accommodate if there are other easy solutions.
Well, what evidence do we have on here? I mean, did we have statistical evidence? I mean, when you look at evidence, okay, and I think we talked about this before, all you need is generally something more than a scintilla but less than a preponderance. I mean, the best description is, you've probably heard beyond a reasonable doubt. That's what you use in criminal standards. It's a very high level of proof, kind of like getting the best super car wash, okay? And there's clear and convincing evidence, that's like getting the better car wash. Then there's the preponderance of the evidence, and that's like getting, a decent car wash. And then if you get something less, it still can be used here, but basically it's a crappy car wash, okay? But doesn't mean that you have to just accept crappy car wash evidence, okay? It means you can look at this and say, well, yes, we had comments in here. Did we have any statistics or any evidence that showed that that if we do an accommodation on here, that there's going to be an undue financial administrative burden upon the county? And sometimes what you don't get tells you as much as what you do get. I mean, is there a letter from the sheriff's department or from the prosecutor's office or any of the county agencies saying, if you do this, here's the undue financial administrative burden on the county, here are the figures here. You really have something to hang your hat on, okay? Because I have to think about this in light of if you end up in court, okay, which partly you're already there. And then the second, side of the equation is, does it really, for just this particular section here, fundamentally alter the zoning ordinance? Well, not really. It's really the first part here is the one that you're probably concentrating on, and that's the undue financial administrative burden. And I just don't think that you have decent enough evidence to not be able to use that. It'd be very difficult for me to come up with a finding that, after the first A through D here, to have one saying, all right, well, we're just going to toss the whole thing because we think we have some anecdotal evidence that it may increase the burden on the county, but we don't have, and it could have been done, okay? The sheriff department could have come forward and said, hey, this is a problem, and here's why, okay? Here's the stats, here's the information here, and, here's how it would work. The prosecutor could have done the same thing, fire department, whoever here. And I'm sure that staff, you consult with other county agencies as well.
Yeah.
And that hasn't come up from, and you have to look at your own county.
Okay, now did we send to Tuscarora Police and they didn't respond? So just because they didn't respond, they could have said, like they always do with the fire, doesn't have an impact. Just because they decided not to respond doesn't mean that they don't have some comment. This person that we had come up was a policeman for 28 years, one of them. The other guy was a well-recognized psychologist or psychiatrist that talked about these issues. If we don't have anything else to go on, you say we can't use our own thoughts on this. And also there's a case that showed that the ambulances or emergency rooms were used for those folks, but it was on the other end of it, saying they were beat up or something more often than other people. But it's still an administrative cost. I think we can't, because those people didn't respond and others did, we should at least be able to sort that out by common sense.
And I can't find my notes on it. But I did I went back on that specific tack, and there was one exhibit that stated that 7 to 10% of the emergency room visits were by people with psychological problems, psychiatric problems.
Sure.
But we had somebody else that came through with information that 25% of the people either have, had, or will have psychiatric problems. So if 25% of the population, only 7 to 10% are coming in, there really isn't a problem.
And we don't know which people said that.
They're coming out better than the rest of us. I better not include myself, because some people think I'm off the deep end anyway. But
would we be having the discussion about administrative burdens and all this sort of thing if we were putting this thing on 300 acres out in the middle of Inverness Township and all ag forest?
No,
probably not.
Would the impact be any different?
No.
Okay.
Well, I'm not sure of that. I'm not sure of that.
I think it would be different.
When you put groups of people in urban populations closer to in closer proximity, I'll tell you, you're going to have a higher crime rate.
They're not going to be closer. I mean, they're still. If you're on a 300 acre, they're still going to be in the same housing units. They're not going to be spread out over the 300 acres with 20 acres in between each house. I mean, they're all gonna be in one.
No, we're talking
One
about,
spot.
we're talking
So
about
you're-
them in relation to the community, and there's a lot of difference between a 300-acre buffer and a 30-acre buffer.
Okay, Chuck?
It's a lot more, and it's only
We
about
had
a
a
20
number-
when you look at it.
We had a number of exhibits that spoke to these type of facilities being located in urban centers.
Yes.
And they universally said there weren't problems. And that's right next door to everybody else. Not in the middle of 300 or 600 acres, but right in the middle of a city. And said there was no problems. So,
And Chuck, this wasn't in the record, but I spent a fair amount of time on the internet too, and I can tell you I found at least 5 of them where the communities are in dire trouble. You could call, they have a number, they say call the mayor and talk to him because this has been a disaster in our community. It's not, I won't make the analogy that it's the same as this, because if this turns out like the applicants have described it to be, it's probably going to be a value to our community. But I will also tell you the ones that were a disaster started out with about the same discussion we just had, but it changed because they didn't have to get licensing. It turned into it turned into a drug center, and then the communities were just out of luck.
Well, the
one of the requirements I would anticipate us putting on this is that the licensing be reviewed, and if any licenses are necessary, that they be obtained. That's going to, in my way of thinking, it's going to have to be one of the requirements on this. But the exhibits that I'm looking at didn't pose that kind of problem that you're saying you found on the internet. And I
agree.
I don't use the internet.
I agree.
Everybody knows I don't use the internet, but I have talked to people that can find damn near anything on the internet.
That's true. That's true.
And the worse it is, the better they like it. So
I don't
I'm going by the
disagree with that.
exhibits we've got here, and I didn't find that.
Okay, back to our question. We have proposed finding from legal counsel.
Make a motion that the finding supporting the 18 or the accommodation be approved as worded.
By legal.
By legal.
Okay, do I have support to that motion?
Support.
Motion and support that the finding be approved as worded by legal counsel for accommodation E. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Yeah. That's why my finger's right here. Okay, we need to back up to page 29, which is section 20.10. Okay?
Yep.
All right. 20.10A.
Make a motion that the factors will support 1 through 2.
Do I have support?
Yes.
Motion and support that factors 1 and 2 will support standard 20.10A. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 20.10B.
Pat,
Yes.
I'd like to make one comment before we add any motions on that. The finding that will not support indicates that the survey is outdated. The survey we have is dated April 14th of 2015, and I don't know how more recent we need on that.
Sir, we didn't include that finding anyway, so it doesn't make a difference.
It just says it was outdated.
It says whatever we wanted.
No,
Well,
just,
we're not discussing the,
Yeah.
they
Yeah,
haven't
well,
decided anything.
right,
yet.
okay.
Yeah.
so I make a motion that the findings will support based on number 1.
Support.
Motion and support that finding number 1 does support 20.10B. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 20.10C.
I would make a motion that we will support the standard finding 1.
Support.
Motion and support that finding 1 will support 20.10C. Any other discussion?
I would like to add item 2, and that's the fact that the review has been made by the soil conservation and erosion officer under the provisions of the Cheboygan County Soil Erosion, Sedimentation, and Storm Water Runoff Ordinance. So, it's a factor that also supports.
Are we going to include number 2?
Yes. I would
Yes.
Yeah.
allow that.
Okay. Findings 1 and 2 will support 20.10C. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 20.10D.
Just a question for people. You know, as I went out there and I walked through that, probably the only area that you have any visibility or fairly closeness, if I'm thinking right, is like the northeast corner where it looks like there's the workhouse and the, I don't know what
Greenhouse? Greenhouse.
Yeah, it might be a greenhouse, but that once you get to that point, just a little ways beyond that, you can. I think one of the very concerned neighbors, because they're fairly elderly and they've got elderly person in one of the homes, very concerned about that particular area. So I don't know if there's something we want to do there for.
Well, can't that facility be used inside, I mean, the greenhouse inside of the workshop for the kayaks or canoes or whatever they're
Mhm.
built?
Yeah, they're not an
All
outside
that be
activity.
inside?
They
No,
usually
it's-
are.
I'm not sure with a greenhouse and all of that, whether there's going to be people around. I'm not sure about the pasture, all of that. So I was just a little concerned about that particular person. Is about the only place where they kind of get to the point where you can actually see and have,
Property.
the property's right there. So
Are you
they put a
looking at
hedge in
tree
there,
buffer
a
or
green
something on there
buffer or
that could be
something
a
in there. I
condition?
think it may help just to cordon that off. All the walking trails are still available to people and all of that. It's not a concern about that.
Are you looking at a tree buffer then?
I don't know. Maybe it's just a hedge. Maybe it's just a fence. I don't know.
That'd be a condition.
I mean, I would have no problem making that a condition that it be a
Sure. No, that's all I was thinking.
tree screening line in accordance with our regulations on
Yeah.
buffers
Mhm.
along the backside of those buildings there.
I think reading 20.10D come to a slightly different conclusion to what's being asked. The site plan shall provide reasonable visual and sound privacy for all dwelling units located therein.
Located therein.
Right.
Not
I think what you're discussing here may be a condition of approval.
Yeah,
That's all right.
Yeah,
Not-
that's what I'm saying.
not
Yeah.
a response
Not a
to this
response to
standard.
this.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't look at it
Condition
as a
of
response to the finding. Yeah, it would just be a
Okay.
condition.
so then I'd make a motion that the factors support 2010D factor 1. keeping in mind we'll make a screening or requirement as a condition of the approval.
Okay, we have motion and support that item number 1 will support standard 20.10B. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Standard 20.10E, all buildings or groups of buildings shall be so arranged as to permit emergency vehicle access by some particular means.
I would make a motion that we approve finding 1, which would support.
Motion and support that finding number 1 will support standard 20.10E. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Standard 20.10F, every structure or dwelling unit shall have access to a public street, walkway, or other area dedicated to common use.
So it's not applicable?
1 and 2, so make motion 1 and 2 is support.
Support.
Motion and support that items 1 and 2 will support standard 2010F. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I missed that.
Motion carried.
I did that a little while ago.
Okay, 20.10G is not applicable. 20.10H. Exterior lighting shall be arranged as follows. A, it is deflected away from adjacent properties.
That's what they propose, so I find 1 support.
Do I have support?
Yes.
Motion and support that item number 1 supports standard 20.10H. Any other discussion?
I would just say that we're probably going to make a condition that ties down the lighting.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Standard 20.10H, exterior lighting shall be arranged as follows. B is not to impede the vision of traffic along adjacent streets.
I would say we have 1 supports.
Do I have support?
Support.
Motion and support that item number 1 supports standard 20.10HB. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Standard 20.10HC, exterior lighting shall be arranged as follows. It does not necessarily illuminate night skies.
One supports.
Support.
Motion and support. Item number 1 supports standard 20.10HC. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 20.10I.
One and 2 support.
Second.
Motion and support that items number 1 and findings number 1 and number 2 support standard 20.10I. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. standard 20.10J.
In the interest of time, I will reiterate my master plan speech.
Chicken and the egg again. No supports.
I assume that's it. Motion and support that finding number 1 supports standard 2010J. Okay.
Did we vote on that?
Oh, come on. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
This time I suppose we would be looking at conditions, so you probably want to get that list together and discuss that.
Yeah. You gotta make a motion
We can make that motion based on conditions
Yeah,
too.
I got your conditions lined up.
Yeah, but I mean, you can add those.
No, I think we ought to.
And that'll all be part of the same narrative.
Yeah, we should look at the conditions.
Okay, page 28 is some recommended conditions.
28, but we're also, I think we got this thing from 10 Reasons. I think that came to us too, that on the back page of that. I don't know, it's sitting on my desk when I got here.
This was a mailing that apparently went out to the planning commissioners, but we didn't. We just received a copy from planning commissioners. It was a public communication. Not,
Okay.
I got mine in my personal bag.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's where mine probably came. Yeah, that just has some things in it too.
Good work.
Yeah.
I don't think I have one here.
Did you know?
Where did that come
Pastor
I rely on it completely.
Okay, who wants to start on the conditions?
We have the recommended conditions 1 through 3 on page 28 and 29. Yep.
Okay.
I think I'll take care of the gimme.
Okay.
I'd like to maybe revise or two to indicate I'm licensing the license with the most, if there's several licenses, the license with the most oversight.
No, all of them.
This is between all licenses.
Any and all. I'm looking to, I don't want to see a vehicle repair license to make it.
No.
What page
It should be any and all.
Oh,
of them.
29. Yeah, right up here.
That are required.
Any and all.
Any and all.
Yours is missing.
Shall be obtained.
Yours is missing.
Any and all shall be.
Yeah.
Let me see if there it is. And who will review that issue? Staff?
That's going to be staff.
If you continue on page 29, it says we either provide copies of the licenses to planning and zoning staff or provide letters or other written documentation from state and federal agencies that licensed facilities caring for the mentally ill or infirm that Heritage Cove Farm's proposed use does not require license or licensing is normally issued to facilities that care for the mentally ill. So they either get a copy of the license or they get a copy of the letter from whatever the licensing agency is that it's not needed.
Either way, you get documentation.
Right.
But who do we want that to go to?
No, it goes to
Staff.
staff.
Go to
Staff.
Okay. And they'll be required to review that, see that there's absolutely no other thing. How is anybody
Staff
going
will be on
to
top.
The biggest issue is licensing for the safety. If we don't have the most oversight to protect the people, at least that feel that there's a problem, that's essential to make certain that they don't, that there's not just a minor light. All and any that apply, I guess, will be as much as we can do, and you guys can review that.
Yeah, and if you, well, Chuck can't, but if you Google online the name of any facility, you can look at the state of Michigan has all the letters that they send out. I've found them on in the past.
Well, we feel
So you can
comfortable
get
if
copies
we
of
review
licenses. You can also
those.
get copies of violations. of that. So
It'd be important before they get in operation that staff review them and maybe comment with copies to us or something.
yeah, sure. Yep.
Okay. Any other conditions? Chuck's writing away over there.
I'm
Do
just,
we need that buffer?
yeah,
on
we're
the
gonna have
buffer.
screening
greenhouse
buffer.
sign or whatever?
Yep.
Between the,
You got the map there, what, that's along the east, northeast property line there.
Let's see here.
Between the buildings on the east end of the grouping.
Over in this area?
Yeah, it'd be right along there, right? You were there.
yeah,
Up and down that, yeah.
In this
right through
area?
there.
on the eastern boundary of the.
This is the east
there.
boundary right here, of the
but
site.
It would, the screening would probably be closer to the buildings.
Yeah.
Just
Well, sure.
a buffer.
Yeah.
That met
Or
our.
put a stipulation of how far from the property line you want it?
I believe our regulation
It does say something.
specifies what spacing and everything else on.
does.
There's-
Meet our standard.
Meets the standard for screening.
That's good.
17.18.4 sets up how those should be set up.
Does it say distance from property line?
Distance from each planting for evergreen, green belt. You have a lot of references in the zoning ordinance, green belt walls or fences. You allow for some flexibility in this. There's height requirements for certain things like institutional and school playground, drive-in restaurants. For the most part, they're 6 feet high, a green belt wall or fence. And if you require those, 1718.4 requires, for instance, plant materials shall not be closer than 4 feet from the fence line or property line where planting materials are planted into a rows. It goes on and on. I could.
Yeah. I would think that the screening would be more appropriate along the building,
Yeah.
some appropriate distance away from the building.
No, that's where it would be too.
Yeah. Say 20 feet from the buildings.
Within, no greater than 20 feet from.
Yeah, no greater than 20 feet.
Do you know which building?
Yeah, now to clarify then, we're talking about the buildings here along that make up
Not down the steep
easterly.
slope, but
Right.
along the top there, in back of the, well, it would be in back of the buildings, between the buildings and the next property over.
Okay, yeah, so we're looking at the greenhouse here and the proposed workshop area here.
Yep.
Okay.
So it would be a north-south line along that, the back of those buildings.
Screening the workshop and greenhouse from the neighboring properties to the east.
Okay. That'll work.
Is there any
And you still.
Is there any possibility that there'd be other neighbors that may buy and live close that would have an impact on it?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think. I think that's.
If they purchase, once this, if this is a fact, and they purchase a property, they're knowing that, then it's their responsibility to provide screening.
Okay, just asking.
That's my personal opinion.
Okay.
Okay.
So we got screening.
And you're still saying within 20 feet is the
Yeah.
part of that? Okay.
How about a Tuscarora or police or sheriff review of that roadway to see if there's if they have any recommendations for the trail or the road?
Signage.
Signage or just a
There's
logical.
stop signs on the trail.
But are there warning signs that the trail crossing is coming up there like they typically do?
I don't
in other
recall
areas?
seeing one there.
I don't either.
Well, I think that should
They
be
frequently
required.
don't have them.
Or we should discuss that with the road commission or.
Yeah.
Okay, I would say the road commission, Tuscarora, and sheriff, I guess, is responsibilities. What about the DNR, DEQ regarding the trail for their signs?
They put the stop signs on the trail,
Okay,
but they're not. They can't put stop signs.
well, let's say
or
the county,
warning signs on the county.
Tuscarora, and sheriff.
Yeah. Or the road commissioner or whoever.
Request
typically does that.
comment from them regarding any safety issues they may have with that site.
Again,
Huh?
you're saying, is this a different request than the one we made for the safety?
I
It's with
think you
regards
might
to
get a
roadway.
response this time.
Okay. Oh, with
Yeah, we're gonna
specifically
have-
to the roadway. Yeah.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
any appropriate signage that might be required.
Specific to the trail crossing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Alleviate the problem there. I think if they had a sign that said trail crossing, on the Grandview Beach Road, on either side of that, it would probably help. I don't know what the county would go along with it, but all we can do is try.
Licensing will probably cover medical supply storage and disposal of those items and any security that might be required. Is that?
I'm sure that licensing will have something to say
If they
about
get to the
it.
point where they're providing that kind of service, then the licensing will definitely.
Yeah.
It's very specific.
Yes.
Controlled substances, the register, signing,
Disposal.
Yeah, it's the whole schmear. But it's dependent on what they do.
Okay, any other standards or conditions?
Lighting.
We think they should put shielded lighting
Shielded lighting
to the path down to the dock or out to the
down the path on the top of the bluff to the dock, and any interior lighting should be directed downward and shielded from any glare toward adjacent properties.
Is there any justification for requesting that these three separate parcels be joined into one parcel for administrative purposes?
Not related to the standards in the ordinance.
It's not.
Okay, anything else?
Covered building code and health.
Yep.
Licensing.
Licensing. Safety issue on the roadway.
Buffer.
The buffer. I can't think of anything else.
We need reference somewhere that soil and sedimentation, stormwater has been taken care of.
That was reviewed.
It's been reviewed, there hasn't been a permit issued yet. It's been reviewed, though.
Permits required.
Permits
We
required.
should require the permit be issued before they. Things. Yeah.
Yeah. We should just have the checklist of the 8 conditions we always apply.
Yeah.
Health department, building code.
Yeah, let's include
soil
those.
sedimentation.
Well, they did. It was 1, 2, 3.
Building code and health department are already on here.
Okay, all right.
We already got soil erosion in the finding, right? Or they don't.
Well,
have a
we
permit,
didn't have the
let's put it
requirement
in
for
there,
the
yeah.
issuance of the permit.
Right.
We've got the fact that it was reviewed.
Yeah,
So we've got to have a permit for that.
Yeah.
right.
And Mike, you got the health department stuff.
It's listed on there already. Okay.
In many of these conditions, are put in that those conditions must be met prior to operation. Is that
Yeah.
okay with you guys?
Yeah.
Put that in there. We've had a lot of people start operating without meeting the standards, and they never did meet the standards.
Okay. So what's our pleasure, guys?
Based on our general findings of fact under section 18.7 and 20.10 of the zoning ordinance, and the additional standards for reasonable accommodation, including the conditions we've just met, I move that we approve
motion in support to approve the permit based on the general findings, the findings under section 18.7, 20.10, the reasonable accommodations, and based on the conditions that we've discussed. There's 7 of them total. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay. Do we have any other unfinished business?
I'm going to bring up unfinished business next week.
Okay, sounds good.
Learned a lot.
How about new business?
Same thing there.
It's going to be a long next meeting.
Enough new business.
Staff report?
Staff.
Yes, I think there has been some discussion tonight about the use descriptions in the ordinance and how some would be duplicates as such. And the Planning Commission will recall that we did adopt a priority to review all of the uses. Staff has been working on correlating those and identifying those that may be the most problematic by being the most alike. I expect to be able to deliver some of those to you guys for review, probably beginning the end of March 1st, or the end of February, 1st of March, somewhere in there. We've got Mr. Graham coming at the next meeting to discuss the implications of the recent Supreme Court decision regarding signage at the next meeting. So I expect that the results of that will cause that to be a priority. So we have those 2 issues in front of us, but I did want to tell you that we have been working on those duplicate uses and reviewing uses, and I expect they'll come up within the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay. Any planning commission comments?
No, pretty good.
Long process, and we all learned a lot. Nothing was easy on this one, and I think we did the best we could with what we had to work with.
I'd like to thank Peter for his time and efforts.
I'd like to thank Peter for putting up with me.
All of them.
Let's have the next questions from this staff and everybody. Should be.
Well, I will say, great group to work with. I mean, we have a lot of good spirited discussion, but people make sense, and they'll probably even leave here and have a beer with you once in a while.
Okay.
I'd like to make a comment that, I started out going one direction on things on this thing, and I've done 180 degrees on some of the major premises. I'm not exactly happy with everything, but I think we have done the best job we could to make sure that the regulation is followed as it's written. I might not agree with everything that's written in the regulation, but I think we did a good job with what we have.
Any public comment? Yes, sir.
My name's Dave Lurie. I'm on Grandview Beach, Vice President of the Board of Grandview Beach. Just want to let you know that we strongly object to your decision, as you would anticipate. We think it's unthinkable and irresponsible to put a 24/7 commercial medical facility in a single-family residential community. By doing this, you've opened up the floodgates for any of these types of commercial medical facilities in any residential beachfront community. Think about Columbus Beach, Aloha Beach, Orchard Beach, Moult Lake Village. Who's next? Who's going to be next? It's clear to us, those of us that live on Grandview Beach, that the federal lawsuit has biased this process. And I can't prove it, but it came up again today. Mr. Wendling said, Mr. Kazim said, there's a meeting on the 22nd, and God forbid if we miss another date because we have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. We could see it all along. We could see the bias, and it's very unfortunate. And I just want to let you know that Grandview Beach has been changed for the worse. It's been changed. We've been violated. You may not think it, but we've been violated. Our rights as homeowners and taxpayers have been violated. And it reinforces the fact that if you hire, litigious attorneys, that they're likely to get their way. And I'm not blaming the commissioners. You had to, as you said, Chuck, you had what you had to work with. You made the best out of it. But there were so many arguments against doing this. I still don't understand one thing. How can a dwelling be 320 square feet where the standard says 720 square feet without a variance? I have not heard an answer to that. And it never came up today. It's mind-boggling. Anyway, I'm afraid I'm going to say something I shouldn't, so I'm sitting down.
Anybody else?
Well, I have done some research, and you were right. There are currents about the laws and adult foster care, and psychiatric patients came under adult foster care in the 60s, because that's when we closed Mercywood, that's when we closed Traverse City. So that all the psychiatric patients got put into adult foster care homes. There are problems, and the problems are increasing because mental health problems are increasing. When you congregate all these people into one home, you have more problems. The mental health associations, the assisted living associations, and the nursing home associations are getting together, and they're trying to change the laws now. You were right. It should have been tabled. You should think about it. The other thing is, you are the most important people. You make the zoning license, you make the law. You're now saying that a nursing home does not have to be one structure. All nursing homes have to be one structure. The beds, the cafeteria, all the housing, the offices are supposed to be under one structure. You're saying no, it can be 4 or 5 structures. Where are they going to go with that? You've set a precedent. I'm sorry.
Can I have your name for the record, ma'am?
Oh, my name is Jill Lutz.
Yes, ma'am.
Chris Legal from Greenwood Beach. It was always my understanding that the zoning commission was here to protect us, to protect our property values. And I feel with this decision, and it may have been enhanced by the threat of financial, legal problems, that what has happened is you have enhanced the value of one property owner's property at an extreme cost, or certainly substantial cost, to the rest of the community property owners nearby. So I'm just terribly disappointed with that. The other thing that I did catch that nobody mentioned was the traffic problems, and you mentioned in detail the 2 trucks a week and that sort of thing. But what about all of these people's friends and their families and whatnot? What kind of restrictions or regulations on this? This could be a daily problem. Is there parking for all these people that come to visit? What about spousal rights and that sort of thing? And if we have men and women in this facility, you have no idea. I have worked with mentally ill people. The group dynamics are enormous, and there's no way to vet this ahead of time. There is no way to predict these things. I worked with kids that one kid didn't like the way the other kid was eating, so he stabbed him in the back 5 times. And this was in a facility where there were 10 staff members standing around while they were eating. They couldn't stop it. It happened so fast. This is the kind of thing you can't predict. It is so volatile. It is mind-boggling that you could do this with 13 staff members. It's just and no containment. These people can walk down to Breakers and have some drinks. The people can bring in drugs. They can bring in booze. There's no control here, people. It's crazy. Hard and fun.
Well,
My name is Pat Lynch, and I own property on Grandview Beach. I have one question and then a comment or two. The question is there a number of residents below which Heritage Cove will not require a license? Do you know this? And what is that number? Can anybody share that with me?
That would be a state question.
Well, do you know the number is what I'm asking. Do any of you know that number?
The response we got from the state, which was kind of a piecemeal thing, gave a break at 20, but one license was required, one type of license for below 20 and one for above 20.
And it depended on which division they were applying to,
Right.
so it changes.
They need a license if they're classifying as adult foster care.
Yes.
If they go in and they rent these cottages, they do not need a license. And that is
correct.
That's correct. So there is no license required. So all of your puffery about licensing and requiring that all and every license, or however you chose to word it, means absolutely nothing. Depending upon the way they would like to create this environment over which you have no control now. That's number one. I had lunch with the founder and the chairman of Rose Hill that was compared to this. He was asked by the proponents for this to come up and testify on their behalf. He refused because he said this absolutely is a bad idea from his experience, which is significant, and he refused to come and testify on their behalf. I shared the differences during public commentary about that. Most of the public commentary has been ignored. What I believe you've done here, are these things being put onto the record? These public comments, by the way? They are? Then I believe what you've done, and I think some of you have led this charge more than others, is absolutely governmental malfeasance based upon a fear of litigation pushed by the attorney for your board and continued to be pushed by others on your board to absolutely shoehorn an inappropriate facility in the community to which you have now just allowed it. And I have to say shame on you for that. You are not representing this county or this township or these people. Shame on you. Sleep on it. And when something bad does happen, be prepared to respond legally.
Anybody else?
Yes. Excuse me. My name is Ann Couture, 655 Grandview Beach. I would like to agree with everything that you've heard, but I'd like to make a couple other points. Having been involved in planning and zoning for in your chairs for a township and many other capacities, I feel like what's been done tonight completely ignores the whole concept of planning and zoning and master planning. I have yet to see, nor did you provide any specific information as to where in the master plan it says you can only look at this master plan if in a zoning change. It's for use in land use changes as well as zoning changes or any consideration of land use. A special use permit is a land use, as you said a million times, Chuck, tonight, it's a land use thing, and that's important that the master plan be looked at. Your own master plan, one of the first goals says that you want to cooperate with other local units of government, and that's a major objective of your master plan because it recognizes that there are other units. Tonight, you just basically threw all that away. I mean, what we have here is a commercial operation in a residential community. That's what it is. You can, put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig, and that's what you've done tonight is said, yeah, it's zoned master plan. Your master plan, Tuscarora Township, says it's residential. And, and we're surrounded by residential. Surrounded by residential use. You have a lot of commercial use. You have made findings without data that's sufficient to support your findings, be it in the environmental arena. We don't have hydrogeological information. We don't have updated wetlands information. And so a lot of your findings are not supported by any data, which you mentioned, you want to have some reason. 18.7c, that it will not create a substantially negative impact on other conforming properties in the area. I am here to tell you, it will. It will. My property, we were gonna upgrade our property and build a small little cottage to retire in. We will not do that with a commercial use. I can see this property from where I live. I can see the whole beach area, and I will guarantee you it has and will, already has and will create a substantially negative impact on our property. And finally, 18.7d, proposed use does not diminish the opportunity for surrounding properties to be used and developed as zone. That's us. And you have created a situation where I don't believe you can support that standard as well. So, you will obviously be hearing more from us, but I'm extremely disappointed in this process tonight.
Anybody else? Any final words from the Planning Commission? Entertain a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.